Ed McCormick is an expert on the latest academic studies of happiness, its benefits, and how to improve it. And he's with us here today. How are you doing?
Doing fine, Toby. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, it's great to have you here. Now, first of all, how would you describe what happiness actually is?
Happiness is a feeling of fulfillment, a feeling of joy, and an emotion of positivity.
And by being a happiness researcher, what do you actually research and how do you do it?
Well, may I back up for a minute? Because it started about a year and a half ago that I began the research on happiness. After I read in the newspaper of the World Happiness Report for 2020, claiming that the happiness in the U.S. Was the lowest in 20 years.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, how can that be with all of the good things? This was before COVID.
Yeah.
Now. So I've been doing a lot of research. That's what I do for a living. I'm a consultant. And I started researching both on the internet and also academic studies about happiness. And to my surprise, I found numerous studies on happiness, 300, 400, 500 of them. It's been studied for years, going all the way back to Aristotle.
Yeah.
So that's how I started putting it together. And the more I read, the more surprised I was about this. I just thought it was just another emotion that we had.
Yeah.
But I discovered that happiness gives us just more than well-being. The result of our happiness provides us with a number of powers, thus the name of my book, Happiness Powers.
Yeah.
And as I went through it, I started listing them, and I listed for the book, although there's more, I listed 50 powers that happiness gives someone who feels happy.
Yeah, absolutely.
For example, a person who is in a happy mood makes more money, gets a job promotion sooner, is more successful in life, has a bigger circle of friends. On the health front, he has she has lower blood pressure, has better tolerance for pain, is healthier, has a better immune system. I can go on. I don't want to bore you with all of that, but as I said, there's over 50 powers that if you are happy, that you show.
Yeah.
Half the book is about the powers of happiness. And of course, desiring happiness, the other half is, well, how do you get there?
Yeah. And I guess it's no surprise that happiness can improve your physical health as well, because health is all part of the same thing. Your mental health affects your physical health, doesn't it?
Yes, Toby, it does.
Yeah. And why do you think that we are suddenly more unhappy than we used to be? Is it social media or the stress of modern life?
It's a number of things, but you brought up one of them, the stress of social media. But it's even the cell phone. Now, I'm going to quote some numbers, but the numbers are in the U.S., but I'm probably certain that they are the same in the U.K.
Yeah.
That in the U.S., they had done a survey last year that found that 64% of people prefer their telephone over sex if they had a choice to give one or the other up. Another 62% sleep with their telephone.
Wow.
And most people who have a cell phone would admit that they're addicted to the cell phone. I threw my cell phone away 8 years ago after walking into the doctor's office and seeing 8 people with their face buried in their cell phone. I could have robbed the office. No one would be able to identify me. And that was the light bulb that went in my head. I said, look, the cell phone is really controlling us. We're not aware of what's going on.
Yeah. And it's remarkable because you can get apps on your phone that kind of count how long you've been on the phone a day. And there are some people who spend most of the day on their phone. I don't know what they're doing.
Well, that's true. And it was easier for me to give it up because of my age.
Yeah.
I was born in the time when the telephone was a wall phone in the kitchen.
Yeah.
So that if somebody called at night, you never heard it, so you never answered the phone at night. And if you wanted to make a phone call, you dialed it. And so I'm used to that. I run two businesses, and even though for the first year it was a handicap, after a while it's like giving up smoking. I just use a landline, and I'm fine. I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
But you said something else that I think is even more important, and that is social media.
Yeah.
Because something happens that's incredible in social media. And that is the likes that we get on social media actually, according to the study, give us a minute injection in our brain of Oxycontin. Ooh. So every time we get a like, we get a momentarily jolt there. We don't know it. It's unconscious. And it gives us a good feeling. And we become dependent upon those. If we don't get those likes, we feel upset, down, depressed. And it really affects the younger people who have not gotten a sense of self-worth yet and are relying on likes to get self-worth.
Yeah.
As we get older, we know that self-worth does not depend upon whether somebody likes us or not. It depends on whether we like ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess a lot of people will still be going on social media trying to get these likes, even if they're facing the negatives, like they're getting abuse, for example.
Yes, exactly. And that's what really makes it so insidious. And that's part of the trend toward unhappiness, right? There's a story that I learned when I was doing my research. It's an ancient Sufi story, which takes place hundreds of years ago, about a man who was traveling a dirt road. And as he wandered the dirt road, in the other direction, a beggar came by, all tattered, worn, and the beggar held up a cloth bag that was ripped and stained. And he said to the traveler, "In this bag, in this putrid, dirty bag, are all my worldly possessions." And the wanderer just looked at him and stared. He said, "Well, I'm sorry about that." And then as the beggar turned in the other direction, the wanderer grabbed the bag out of his hand and ran down the road with it. And the beggar dropped to his knees, crying in anguish about losing his bag.
Wow.
And around the corner, the wanderer dropped the bag in the middle of the road. And as the beggar got up and shuffled down the road, he saw the bag in the middle of the road and screamed with joy, my bag, I found you." And that is really about the parable about what happiness is. It doesn't depend upon what we have. It's about what we feel about what we have.
That's true. It's a good way of putting it. And I saw the other day on TV that the secret to happiness is to lower your expectations so that when good things happen, you're a lot more pleased about it, I think, is the reasoning for it. Is that the real secret to happiness?
The secret to happiness is much different than what you expect it to be. And that's really what the book is about. The last chapter in the book is titled Surprise Ending, because it surprised me too as I was doing it. The secret of happiness is not to seek it, is to not to look for it, because the more you look for it, and the fact that you may not find it, the less happier you become. And just as you said, you want to lower your expectations. To find happiness, you have to do it indirectly. And there are 5 or 6 ways to do that, but you want to do all of them, not just one of them. For example, you want to develop the power of self-kindness, to be kind to yourself, to be thoughtful of yourself, to be generous to yourself, to give yourself talks, and to give yourself strength to meditate. So that's self-kindness. The next item is the power of gratitude. And Toby, gratitude is an extraordinarily powerful emotion, because when you thank people for what you have and what you're giving, you are actually making yourself feel better as you thank people. because the other power that works with gratitude is the power of giving. And this is what I mean. The power of giving includes volunteering, doing things for others, being kind to others, being thoughtful to others, not just charity for giving money away, but doing things for others. And as you do things for others, you actually are attracting more friends. And as you grow your circle of friendship, that provides the secondary aspect of happiness. And if you're thankful for that, that intermeshes with the giving, to be grateful for that, to be grateful for what you have. That again is you're lowering your expectations and not looking for material things as much as you're looking for mental things and thoughtful things. And now another thing to find happiness is to find your purpose in life. And it's the power of purpose. What are you doing in life? What are you providing in life? What are you giving in life? What are you expecting in life? You have to ask yourself those questions. As a young person, it's hard to find. As you become older and you get more experience, it becomes much easier to find your purpose. And the moment you find your purpose, the happier you become, again, indirectly. Mm-hmm. It's like the young fellow whose father was a doctor. He wants to become a doctor, and maybe that's his purpose, and maybe that's what he's concentrating on, as an example. And there are others, me included, who for years after college graduation wandered around wondering what they really wanted to do and what their purpose was. But once you find it, it hits you like a ton of bricks. Yeah. It builds your self-worth up more than anything that you can do. Yeah. And that's what makes you smile. Yeah. And grateful.
Yeah. And the thing about lowering expectations, though, is that I would have thought more optimistic people are happier. So I suppose it sounds like a bit of a contradiction to me.
Well, you're right on point, Toby. Mm. As part of the studies that we found, we divided them into pessimistic people and happy people, the half glass full and the half empty glass people. And the more optimistic person was the happier person. Yeah. But there's good news there, because unlike many things that we can't change, they have discovered that one can change from being a pessimist into an optimist over time through various exercises. And by becoming more optimistic in life, you do become happier in life, in yourself.
Yeah. And are there any groups of people that are happier than others in terms of ethnicity, gender, wealth, or is it just kind of all over the place?
Well, there are, first of all, the general group is the optimistic group. Those that are optimistic tend to be happier. So that's one group. But there are people who are wealthier, tend to be happier. Now, several studies, I think there are 3 studies now, that showed whether money buys happiness or not. Yeah. And they found it does. Yeah. Up to a certain amount. And, up to $75,000. Yeah. This is U.S., I'm sorry. But with inflation going the way it's going, who knows if it's going to be higher than that. But up to $75,000, then getting so much more didn't add to the happiness. Yeah. There might be some expectation of wanting more, but they weren't any happier or unhappier. I suspect that's because it paid for their food, shelter, and clothing, and it didn't want for anything other than that.
Yeah, that's quite amazing, because I've never done any research on this, but that's always been my own theory about money buying happiness. It does till you reach a certain amount.
Yes, yeah. Well, the old saw says money doesn't buy happiness. Well, that's not correct.
Yeah, because if you've got absolutely no money to your name and are struggling to get by and wondering where the next meal is coming from, it's hard to be happy.
Oh, yes, it is. So that's what these studies looked at. Many of the of these old sayings, so-called, they're the ones that were looked at by these academic studies. studies, some proven and some disproven.
Yeah. So where are we able to find your book if we're interested in reading it and finding all about it?
Well, it's available either on Amazon.com in the UK or Barnes and Noble. And it's Happiness Power. And let me reveal a secret, if I might.
Okay.
Happiness Power is written by Robert Gill Jr., which is my pseudonym. Years ago, when I started writing, someone advised me, don't write in your name, because if your book sucks, they'll know who wrote it. So I found Robert Gill Jr. as a pseudonym, and I've used that ever since.
Yeah. Although equally, if it's amazing, they'll never know it's you.
Yeah, well, that's all right. I've done enough where I'm happy with my life.
Yeah, I suppose you'll have the anonymity and won't get mobbed on the street from the fame.
Yeah, all right. So I'm still being interviewed as Ed McCormick. So I'm not completely totally anonymous.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show today. It's been great having you here.
Oh, likewise, Toby.